Okay, amazing. Welcome everyone who is here for our second LinkedIn Live event. Very excited to have this time Marlene as a guest, as kind of like a very experienced lawyer. Because today what we want to do is we want to speak about the AI Act, and especially about Article 4 of the AI Act when it comes to AI literacy. This will be one of the first parts of the AI Act that is going to go into action. But before we start the discussion, maybe let's have a short kind of like introduction round. Maybe I just start shortly. So my name is Tristan. I'm the CEO and founder of the AI Strategy Institute. I'm a lecturer for artificial intelligence, or especially the management of artificial intelligence at the Technical University of Munich. And I'm a faculty member for Gen AI and AI at the Boston Consulting Group. And before that, I built up one of the largest startup incubators for AI in Europe. And ever since the AI Act has been very, very present and always leaves a lot of question marks. And we hope with kind of like today, with our guest today, with Marlene, we can kind of like shed a little bit of light into parts of the AI Act. But before we go deeper into it, Marlene, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit and tell you a little bit about your experience in the field, and also maybe already what has been your experience with the AI Act so far.
Yeah, thank you, Tristan, for having me. My name is Marlene Schreiber. I'm an attorney certified specialist in IT law and partner at the IT and IP law firm HÄRTING Rechtsanwälte in Berlin. We advise clients from startups to DAX-listed companies on all matters of IT and digitalization law, particularly regarding the legacy of digital business models, platforms, software as a service, software, e-commerce, software projects, and as well as the implementation of new technologies, especially AI. In this regard, I regularly give lectures, workshops, webinars on the topic, write articles, moderate panels, all this kind of stuff. We also introduced an AI officer workshop, and I am very pleased to have been named as Lawyer of the Year 2023-24 in IT law. So that is my experience in law. I think it started about 2 years ago that we had more and more clients asking us for advice with regard to the legal framework of AI. And now that we do have the AI Act, we're doing more and more of that work. And I really like that.
So first of all, congratulations. I didn't even know that you have been named kind of like the Lawyer of the Year. So congratulations.
Well, one of the last chances to actually say that, because 2024 is over and another colleague has taken over. So next year I have to stop telling people that I was named. So it was my last chance.
Yeah. So then let us straight dive in kind of like a little bit in your experience, kind of like, can you just kind of like shortly, I mean, you said already since 2 years ago, people have been approaching you with regarding to the AI Act. Can you give us maybe 1-2 sentences on how you see this? Because I mean, when I was working with our startups, I mean, we always knew that the AI Act was coming, and the challenges with the AI Act was that it always left a lot of question marks when it comes to the implementation. I mean, we can read what is written there, but what does it mean if we have to put it in action? And maybe you can say a little bit about this, and then I think this would help us kind of like to understand or give the setting for this one article number 4 that we're speaking about.
Sure. So I have to say that really talking about the AI Act, I have not been doing that for the past 2 years. So the experience I shared or the advice I gave was mostly on the existing legal framework regarding AI, like data protection and IP regulation and that kind of stuff. The really helping clients with the AI Act is kind of new. I think that started about let's say half a year ago or 8 months ago that clients who do have AI projects started to approach us and ask for advice. One of the reasons I said before that I really like that more and more awareness happens and more clients need advice on that is that the AI Act is for lawyers a very, very exciting field, you know, because there's so many, like you said, question marks, so many legal wordings and legal measures that need to be evaluated and need to be formed, if you can say so. And I know and I understand that many companies get a little bit scared
Nervous.
or annoyed when they hear that, because all they hear is, oh my God, that's work, a lot of work, a lot of uncertainty. But it also gives us the possibility to really, you know, give our own visions of how to use AI, a better understanding, kind of to form the situation. I think that is a very exciting part, and that should also be an idea for companies to look at the AI Act not only as another regulation that the EU is giving us, but also a chance to you know, approach this field and to maybe also review processes and measures already implemented in the companies and make them more efficient.
So you say basically it's also a little bit learning by doing with the AI
Oh,
Act.
definitely.
Now that we have the AI Act and we have to kind of like understand what it means. So
Definitely.
maybe
I think one of the, you know, a comparison that makes sense in many situations when approaching the AI Act is looking back how we approached the GDPR implementation. There are a lot of similarities, and I think we learned from the GDPR projects and can make the implementation of the requirements that the AI Act sets a little bit easier and better.
Yeah. So maybe let us dive into it, because the AI Act, I mean, was I mean put or came into action, and correct me if I'm wrong, in August, and now the idea is that over kind of like the next 2 years or so, kind of like different parts of the AI Act will kind of like go into action, which will leave kind of like companies the possibility to actually prepare for the AI Act. And one of the first parts that is going to put into action is going to be on the 2nd of February, so actually quite soon. And one of the first articles that organizations have to comply with is this article number 4, AI literacy. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this means, or what is this idea of this AI literacy article number 4?
Of course. So to give you a brief overview, Article 4 mandates that providers and deployers of the AI systems must make measures to ensure, to their best extent, a sufficient level of AI literacy of their staff and other people dealing with operation and use of AI system on their behalf. And the goal is to ensure that staff can understand the correct application of technical elements during the AI system's development phase, apply appropriate measures during its use, you know, being aware of the suitable ways in which to interpret AI systems output, and in case it's affecting people, the knowledge necessary to understand how decisions are taken with the assistance of AI and how they have an impact. So yeah.
So I think it's very interesting. So if you look at it, because what you're saying is, normally when we have kind of like the AI Act, it places kind of like different burdens on kind of like, or different measurements on different players. So if you are a supplier of AI or kind of like one that is actively using it, it seems like that article 4, it doesn't really matter if you are kind of like a user of AI or someone that is building AI. You kind of like have to prepare. And I mean, you mentioned GDPR, and I remember I don't know how many GDPR trainings I have done whenever I came into a new organization. Will this be something that is very similar, or when we talk a little bit about kind of like how is this going to maybe already put into action does this mean for me that similar to GDPR training, I will have kind of like an online video, or is there where kind of like gives me some basic AI understanding, or is there more to that?
Well, the thing is, there's no one fits all solution, right? Because when we talk about the measures that a company has to take, that is based on the technical knowledge, experience, education, training that is already there. The context of the AI systems that are used, and the persons or group of persons to whom these AI systems are to be used. So if we take a closer look at the definition in the law, AI literacy should provide all relevant actors or actors in the AI value chain with the insights that are required to ensure the appropriate compliance. You know, and it's correct. It's correct enforcement. So that means skills, knowledge, understanding, and it has to take into account, like I said, the know-how that is already there. How can you say that right? And you know, I think the law says at one point, in order to obtain the greatest benefits from those AI systems, you know, while protecting the fundamental rights. And therefore you cannot say, okay, you know, there's this one training that you have to do, right? Then it's fine. I think you have to have like a basic knowledge for all people involved, but then you also have to just make sure that the requirements that come from the AI systems you use are implemented within the company, and that can be very individual.
Yeah. So it seems there are kind of like a couple of parts to it. So there could be something that is kind of like very basic, something like a AI driver's license that I have heard to kind of like guarantee that you have kind of like basic understanding. But if you are an organization where you might be applying AI use cases or building AI use cases that fall into kind of like a higher risk class, of the AI Act, so meaning kind of like the actions they trigger could have more severe consequences or harm for individuals, then there's probably a little bit more you need to do in order, or these people that will be working on or with these systems might need additional kind of like training to have this, right?
And that makes sense. You know, if you look at the requirements, then it basically, if you want to like make it very simple, then you have to say there has to be technical knowledge, legal knowledge, and let's say project management knowledge that complies or interacts with the existing risks, right? And if I just use ChatGPT within my company, the risk is a lot lower as if I am actually implementing high-risk AI systems in the products that I'm selling to my customers, right? I think that is something that you really need to understand, that not only, I mean, there are a lot of requirements, or most of the requirements in the AI Act really rely on the questions, do we even have AI, of course? Then what is the risk? And then what is your role? And that also applies to AI literacy.
Yeah. And how, like you mentioned kind of like the idea of how is your risk, and how do you think kind of like this risk or understanding of the risk relates to kind of like AI literacy, and if you see, okay, I'm high risk, then I need to make sure that I have kind of like additional measures or additional training. And is this something where I need to be certified with kind of like having training? So is this something I need to have from some external provider, or can I train myself, so to say, on the job? And is there something like a certificate that I need to show? Like, I mean, how at the end of the day will this be checked? Is there someone coming in and say, okay, well, I want to see that all the employees that have been working on this field have done a specific training?
Yeah, that is a very good question. There is no requirement for a certain certification yet. You know, that is also a question that we can discuss later when people ask, so do I need an AI officer? But different from the GDPR, for example, where there are cases where you need a specific certification, that is not the case for the AI Act and for AI literacy yet. Although I have to say that we have to be aware that the EU Commission is working on what is the right wording, guidelines and codes of conduct. As far as I'm concerned, those codes of conduct are voluntary, but I think they will for sure set a certain level of what you can expect. But even if we do not have those code of conducts yet, the requirement is there. So companies have to deal with it and have to make sure they meet those requirements. And I think what is going to happen, or what I expect to happen, is first authorities, or not first, but one of the two aspects, authorities will, if you interact with authorities, either because they just come for you because they decide to look into a specific area of use or a specific branch, and they, for example, send you a questionnaire. And one of the questions will very likely be, what is your company doing? What has your company been doing to make sure that appropriate AI literacy is implemented in your company? And then you should be ready to explain which measures you have been taken and why you think these measures are sufficient. And I think with that, also, again, with the GDPR, when we have been interacting with authorities, we learned very, very fast that it is a very good idea to be prepared. And then you can start to discuss details. I mean, they can be like, okay, but we think you have a wrong impression of the risk you're dealing with. You have to take more measures. Then you can discuss that. But you need a basis that you can discuss about. And if you haven't done anything, or only have taken measures that are obviously not, equivalent with the risk, then there's nothing to discuss about. And then the authorities, I expect them to be very strict on that, to make sure that the AI requirements are implemented. And the second question is, what will your customers say, right? I mean, we have the case already, or the cases already now, that clients come to us and say, okay, this is the AI system we use, that we have been developed, and now our clients ask us, or our customers ask us, what have you done to make sure that you meet the requirements of the AI Act? And then again, I should be prepared to make sure that my potential customers are not working with other companies because they do not trust me as a company using AI or implementing AI enough.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me a little bit. So one of my first jobs in the world of AI was actually working for an AI startup in the medical field. And way before kind of like the AI Act came, you have kind of like this medical device regulation. And then once we kind of like said, okay, well, we want to certify the solution that we have, I remember we all had to do these trainings. And then, as you said, there was a checklist, and it was like the question, okay, well, what did you do? What I also kind of like want to talk a little bit about is not like we are now talking a lot from kind of like, this is what you have to do, kind of like more like a little bit of if you don't comply with this and if you don't show this, this might be a punishment to you. But I mean, my experience is the idea of the AI Act was not to kind of like not only make sure that everyone is kind of like developing trustworthy things, but also to drive innovation and also to drive adoption of AI. And I mean, the AI Act has been criticized, but I see this Article 4 as actually a very nice way how you can kind of like drive also adoption in the organization. Because what we are normally doing, or what I'm doing, is I'm coming in the organization, and then one of the first ways how to drive adoption is via education and training those people. And I believe kind of like this we shouldn't think about this article number 4 as kind of like a burden, but actually more as an opportunity to educate those people, So now it's not nice to have, but it's a must have, but it can be really a possibility, because if you educate the people, you build down kind of like these barriers that you have often also in bigger organizations, where people are, okay, well, AI is coming, it might be taking my job, and I don't want to use this and I don't want to work with it. I see also kind of like this as a big chance to really drive adoption, and not only see kind of like this article number 4 as a way to comply to things, but really as an opportunity and as a chance. And I wanted to kind of like get your opinion on this, how you see this.
I think that's the answer is very boring, because I totally agree. I totally think so as well. And that actually applies for a lot of the requirements that the AI Act sets. Maybe if you allow, I will tell you a little story when it comes to the question of, is this regulation helping us or thriving innovation, or is it hindering? So I was in Mexico in September at an international law conference where I'm vice president of the technology law committee of the International Bar Association. So there lawyers from all over the world come there, and we have a very impressive group of high-level lawyers, IT lawyers from all over the world. And I hosted a table on AI governance. And so we were discussing the AI Act, because obviously it's the first full regulation of AI, right? And what I heard from my colleagues from Brazil and the United States and Canada and Japan, they were all like, our countries and legislation started to look at it, but they're all waiting for the European Union to be the first mover and to set the standards. Mm-hmm. That is something that we have to keep in mind, because I also think that helps companies. If you are within that first movers, right, also to implement those measures in your company and really take your staff with you, because I mean the biggest problem is not the rules that we set. It's how do we implement the rules, and how do we implement them in a way that makes sense, not for not implementing rules to have rules, but rules for a certain purpose, and to make the product better, the AI system better, the company better. And I really think that goes hand in hand. So I totally agree. And I always try to encourage clients, because, like I said, it's the first reaction is, oh no, another regulation, another, more requirements. And I think if you start looking at what the requirements really are, and what the requirement of Article 4 and AI literacy is, the more you understand this, really, it makes sense that, those requirements are there for a reason. And actually, it makes sense for my company as well, because it will make my staff better. It forces me to make sure that the education really meets the requirements of the AI system that might be crucial for my business model, right? So I would really encourage companies to not see that as a threat, but like you said, as a chance and a support in enabling the people and empower the people in my company. Also, because now that the focus is on this topic, the workshops you find, the material you find, the education you find gets better and better as well. And we talk about, like today, but also in other workshops, there's a lot of interdisciplinary talk going on that I find crucial. In the sense of AI, because that is not something that only the tech people can solve. This is not something that only the legal people can solve. When we talk about AI compliance and AI literacy, this is a very interdisciplinary field, and it requires us to really work together and to share our knowledge. And I think that's a great chance, and it's actually an exciting time to be part of that and being able to to help building that.
I'm seeing that there are already a couple of questions coming in. I just kind of like, as a short comment, we see your questions. We would leave them a little bit more towards the end, where we can answer questions. what I want to know, because I mean we also kind of like have looked at the AI Act, at the AI Strategy Institute, and the article number 4, because it's kind of like we also see it as kind of like a crucial way to educate people and drive innovation and help also kind of like to set up kind of like these AI strategies or a roadmap for artificial intelligence. And we kind of like line out some kind of like guidance, some steps you can do or take, especially at the beginning. So this is something also I would love to discuss with you a little bit. So let's imagine. I work with big and small, or we work with big and small companies. Bigger companies are already doing a lot when it comes to AI literacy and AI education. I mean, one of the main challenges I think are going to still be with the SMEs, where a lot of them are just getting started and are feeling very, very overwhelmed with kind of like things that are happening, not only with the AI Act, but also with the rapid pace of development we are seeing in the field. How would you kind of like say, okay, well, you are an SME and you want to get started, and how would you approach this, and how would you maybe use the ideas that you can find in article number 4? Because article number 4 in itself is very short, but there has been a lot of kind of like written around it, and kind of like some guidelines what you could put into measure. And I would love to talk a little bit more about this, other than kind of like pure training, what are kind of like provisions or things or steps you should do as an organization, maybe if you're kind of like very early or at the beginning.
Yeah. First of all, I think you're totally right. It's much easier for bigger firms, for bigger companies to approach this, because they simply do have a lot of more know-how and more resources to do so. I think it is crucial for smaller companies as well, and I think the approach I would recommend is the first step. No matter if you're a big company or a small company, the first step that might surprise you that it comes from a lawyer is, but to really look into and have a clear understanding of the level of engagement with AI. You know, like, is it AI in the sense of AI Act that I'm using? What are the risk categories, and what is my role? You know, that is, I think, the most crucial thing you have to look at first before you start looking at any measures or anything that you can do. And then the second thing is to really look at to really make an internal evaluation to identify the existing knowledge and skills that you already have, because you might be surprised how much there's already existing, right?
Yeah.
And you can build on that. And then when you start to train people, do not try to make it, or do not have the idea of, okay, we have to do it now and it has to be 100%, it has to be perfect, it has to like cover all the topics. Focus on the most important topics that from my point of view are the technical, legal and practical issues that come with AI systems, and make sure that you have a person or a dedicated team that has an overview of the AI systems used in your company, and that they are aware of the biggest risks that can come with it. What I really like to work with is like a light system, like a traffic light system.
Yeah.
You know, like red, yellow, green, and you know, and for example, to sit down, to do a brainstorming, make an evaluation of what are the risks that we are actually facing here. And you can actually transfer that to all the other requirements that you know might be applicable.
Yeah.
And think of, okay, what are the highest risk, and that can, on the one hand, be the implementation of the risk, or the what can come out of it, like the harm that can be done, but also what are the things that are obvious, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like the idea to go from the outside to the inside, you know, like everything that competitors or authorities can see right away, or are considered to be the biggest risk, make them a red light and approach them first.
Yeah.
And that's the same with AI knowledge and literacy, look at the points that are crucial, and make sure the people that are your staff is working on that, or is enabled and how to say, like gaining knowledge with that first. And then, you can one after another look at the other parts that you might need training for, but are not that crucial. Because by that, first of all, you lower the costs, because you do not. I know that a lot of startups, for example, they do not have the budget to do it all at once. So do it one after another, and you also get an idea of how can we approach that without feeling overwhelmed right away. And one thing I think companies have to understand, that it's not like we said in the beginning, right? You cannot do one training and then it's done, or write down one AI strategy or guideline and then we're fine. This is work in progress. And there's no way out of that, because one of the challenges we're facing with the AI Act on many levels is actually that we're talking about, or we're looking at a moving target. When we looked at the GDPR, we were like, of course, there was software that was not used before and had to be evaluated. But now we're not only talking about software; we're talking about AI that is constantly developing in such a high speed that we really have to make sure that we have trained staff that knows how to keep up with that.
Yeah. There's also one interesting point that you mentioned. I want to go into kind of like having maybe a dedicated team or person for AI. I want to pick this up in a second, because what I want to do is kind of like share also my experience, because I've been working in the field of AI education for a long time, and kind of like also setting up roadmaps of organizations, and kind of like how we often see it, especially if you start, is normally those companies have one kind of like big day at the beginning where they come together, often invite external speakers to get people just like inspired and talking about technology, because they see at some point, okay, well, there is the need to do something. And then within kind of like this day, they find kind of like these early adopters. And this is exactly what you said. There's probably already a lot of know-how and knowledge in the organization when it comes to AI, because it's a very exciting field. It's a super exciting field, and some people will have kind of like maybe done already some trainings, are experimenting with it. Maybe some have developed their own applications within the organization or at home, so if they have kind of like more of a coding background. And this is kind of like a good way kind of like to get them together and also have an understanding what is the feeling. And then with this group, often they're kind of like, sometimes the companies call them AI ambassadors, and they kind of like, they have these monthly sharing circles where they come together and discuss certain issues, or introduce new things, and introduce maybe prompts or new tools that they have been using. And out of this working group, what we quite often see is that we have, and this is something I really, really like, is that guidelines are coming out, kind of like guidelines for the use of AI in an organization. So when I say, for instance, okay, hey, we want to use AI in a way that it's not displacing people. And I think these guidelines are crucial, and also kind of like empowering your employees to use AI, because what I'm seeing, or what we're seeing in general, kind of like with studies, if you don't have these guidelines, and if you don't allow your employees to use AI, they're going to use AI regardless. They're going to bring their own AI tools, because it makes them just so much more efficient at certain work. And this is what we call shadow AI, and that can create a lot of headache, a lot of problems that are coming back.
Liability risk. It's a huge liability risk. Not only for the company, but only for the management. That's something that companies have to understand. As the manager of a company, I have to make sure that the risks that are existing are met. With measures to minimize them. And if I am aware of the situation you just told me, it's not enough to say, we're not really officially implementing AI, so we do not have to care about that, because people are using it. Whether or not your giving them the opportunity to. And it's a lot smarter to give them the opportunity, but to make sure that there are measures to minimize liability by taking measures to ensure overall compliance. And one of the measures can be guidelines, but I also have to make sure that those guidelines are followed, right? And therefore, my employees have to understand what these guidelines are, what they mean, and what are the rules they are required to follow. But I had a similar discussion just a couple of weeks ago with a manager who told me, yeah, I know that, we officially did not get an OpenAI account because if they want to use it, they can use your private ones. And he was not even aware of the fact that OpenAI then is using the data inserted in your prompts for own training. But also he was not even aware that it is a liability risk not only for the company, but for him as the manager, because he let that happen without people knowing the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very interesting. So I think actually then if you're saying this, then it goes further than just giving guidelines, because I mean, me as an employer, when I have these tools at home, I expect that I can also use something at work. And if I can't, I mean, I'm also not allowed to take my private computer, right? So then this means if this is my expectation and I see this somewhere else happening, or they can use AI tools, then we also think about not only giving the guidelines how you should use the tools, but making those tools available to the people that want to use them is very important in a compliant way. And there are ChatGPT Pro is also compliant, but there are also other ways how, for instance, I work quite a bit with a very cool startup in Berlin. I'm not sure if you know them. I mean, you are sitting in Berlin, Langdoc. They have kind of like their own kind of like compliant or allows you to have your own completely compliant, so to say, ChatGPT based on kind of like all the know-how of your organization that doesn't leave kind of like the doors of your organization. And I love kind of like how there are a lot of startups. Are we seeing a lot of startups that actually using some of the ideas of the AI Act and want to kind of like help organizations to deploy tools, AI tools in a compliant way.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a great approach, and it's something that especially startups have to keep in mind, because what we see a lot is that startups come to reach out for legal advice when they're done, like when they're ready, and they're like, okay, we want to launch this next week. Can you have a quick look and tell us it's fine? And that's when the problem starts, right? Especially if the AI is crucial for your business case. Then please have a budget. It does not have to be for my legal firm. There are great other legal firms and great lawyers out there, but make sure that you have compliance advice at the beginning, where you're still able to work on your product, where you're still able to change certain processes or implementations that you might not be able to work on when you're about to launch.
I think this is kind of like a very important hint as well. And another thing I would like to talk a little bit about you. I mean, what we're seeing kind of like I mentioned kind of like this group of AI ambassadors, and at some point, if kind of like the AI ambitions of an organization are getting more serious, we see kind of often that this role is much more institutionalized. Often bigger organizations, what they have is in form of an AI center of excellence, where they kind of like center the competencies they have, and they're also kind of like responsible not only for the responsible development of artificial intelligence, but often also of the training of the whole organization and the rollout of the AI strategy. And what we have, and you mentioned that is something you're providing as well. And I mean, we also have training to help people to kind of like prepare stepping into more of these management roles and control roles when it comes to artificial intelligence. And I want to talk with you specifically about kind of like this role of an AI officer, because right now we're seeing also a lot of trainings popping up around kind of like, hey, AI officer, become compliant with article number 4 and the AI officer. Could you maybe explain what is this idea of an AI officer, and do you really need an AI officer? And is an AI officer a person that is more like we know from kind of like from GDPR, this one person that kind of like, I always say, because I'm from the startup, the boom man that tells you not to do certain things, or you're not allowed to do certain things, or is this more? Is this someone who can really drive kind of like the strategy and the implementation of AI in the organization?
So first of all, that is a question we get a lot nowadays. There is no requirement to have an AI officer in your company. Different in the AI Act, different from the GDPR, you know, where under certain circumstances you are required to have a DPO. There is no such requirement in the AI Act. The AI Act does not, as far as I'm concerned, use the wording AI officer. So when companies ask me, do we need an AI officer? I say it's not required by law. But depending on the size of the company, the scope, and the risk of AI used, even though there's no specific legal requirement, and the more essential AI is to your business model, the more you will need a person or a team that could be named AI officer or ambassador or whatever you call it, right? To have someone evaluating, controlling, and implementing measures that make sure that your company as a whole is compliant to the AI Act. So the role that I would expect when I have an AI officer in front of me, or when we are educating AI officers, or for your interest at our law firm, we do have an AI officer as well. While not explicitly required, that AI officer can play an essential role in coordinating all the AI initiatives, ensuring compliance, facilitating AI literacy across the organization, because, like we said earlier, it's something that goes across teams. It's interdisciplinary, right?
Yeah.
So his or her responsibilities could include developing, updating AI strategies, overseeing training programs, acting kind of as a liaison officer, something between the technical team and the management and the legal team and the compliance team, to have that kind of umbrella to make sure that the know-how that is there or needs to be built up is really used. Because there's the worst case in your company is that every team is doing their own AI strategy, or having their own rules or their own approach. And also, for example, if I'm an intern legal legal counsel in a company, and I'm asked to be the AI officer, I cannot perform that role if I am not interacting with the technical team and the data team, for example. So another question we often get is like, okay, if we have an AI officer, should that be the legal counsel? Should it be the DPO? Should it be an own role? And that is a question that I cannot answer, because it also depends on the company. But it definitely makes sense to have someone or a team that is covering, or at least have a connection to all these parts in the companies that are involved. I hope that kind of answered your question.
Because this would have been now kind of like my second question, like who would be the ideal person to be an AI officer? So it's not to say kind of like it's not to say kind of like, okay, well, this is maybe something additional of a data protection officer or the AI legal team, but ideally this is someone who is really at the heart, at the center of the action, where kind of like the development is, because this person will be responsible for kind of like not only making sure that things that are happening are aligned with the provisions of the AI Act, kind of like guaranteeing trustworthy AI, but also has to do more and can kind of like facilitate those trainings, the literacy. And so I mean, this seems to be, I mean, if we see what's happening now, this seems to be actually a quite exciting position to fill in the future, because I believe that most of the organizations don't have a role like this yet. And for me, it seems something very cool because you seem to be working in between kind of like different fields on the newest technologies and really kind of like are an agent, a driver of change. And your role is going to be very, very strategic to the organization, right?
Definitely, and don't get me wrong. It might be the DPO who takes on that role, or it might be a legal counsel who takes on that role. But I think it would be a mistake to limit that to a specific role that is already there in the organization. And one example that I find very helpful to show what I mean is, let's say, you know, in the startup you started working in. So we do have a company that works with AI in the health sector. That is, or let's say it's biological topics. How could a DPO really who is very, you know, well aware of all the risks that that appear when you're working with personal data, but how can he understand what the health implementations are, the risks, you know, in relation with health issues? So when looking for the right person for that role, you always have to take into account what are the risks we're facing here, and are that risks that are mostly connected to personal data, then the DPO might be a good person to go to. But on the other hand, he might not, because, you know, there's so many other questions on the table that he or she will not be in the position to cover that. And then it might be a good idea to think of a completely new role, and to make those people work together. And that is something, I know I said it before, but I cannot stress it enough. Make sure that your staff and your AI officer, your AI team, your AI governance team understands the importance of working together and be interdisciplinary.
Yeah, I think this is really kind of like a great takeaway. So what I want to do, kind of like the last couple of minutes, I want to look a little bit of questions, because I see the people here watching have been very actively in writing things. But before we go over to the questions, do you feel there's something that you haven't said yet that is important to say before we go over to the questions?
I think we touched most of the important things. I have a key takeaway, but I would, if you don't mind, I would
let's leave it at the end,
keep
probably,
that
right?
until the end to
Yeah. So let's look a little bit at kind of like some of the start questions. So Steve is writing, it is good to know within which guardrails we are allowed or able to operate with AI, but doesn't it also inhibit innovation? I mean, this is a critic that is often made, right? So that the AI is actually inhibiting innovation. How do you see this?
Well, it's true if we are implementing rules just to be implementing rules. You know, if we do not question the measures, but take them to have them. When we look at it, not only from a company side, but from a society point of view, I try to not to make it too
philosophical.
Yeah, thank you. But I think we do have to, because that is one of the main questions we have to ask ourselves when working with AI. What kind of society do we want to live in? And me personally, I want to live in a society that is open to new technologies. I want technologies to serve the people, and I want to live in a world where I do not have to be afraid of new technologies like AI. I don't want to be afraid to be using them, and therefore we need to have a framework that gives me the security that the AI I'm using is actually serving me and will not do me any harm. And that is actually the core interest of the AI Act, to make sure that that the people of Europe are facing AI that is serving them and not violating their rights. So, and if we keep that in mind of kind of like the overall idea, and if we're interpreting the requirements that are set under that impression, I think that there's a good chance that it will help us to innovate and not inhibit.
Yeah, By the way, a small anecdote. I was actually, so yesterday I was still in Poland, and I was actually, I thought it was not very hilarious, but I was a victim of an AI algorithm going a little bit rogue, because I had a flight this morning. I was in Poland actually talking about at the Institute of Western Affairs about regulation versus innovation in the context of artificial intelligence. And I also talked about how the AI actually can enable innovation, but still, I mean, I'm coming from the startup world and also being very critical about a lot of the things. And then what happened in the evening is my flight got cancelled that I was supposed to take this morning, and of the airline, I'm not going to name which airline it was, the chatbot automatically booked me on a flight and checked me already into another flight that I didn't really want to take, and it took me like 2 hours to get the people to undo the thing that this was doing. So it was a bit, so I was like, actually the first time I felt how important it is to have something like this, right? And what I also always say to startups is it is a lot of depends on your mindset. If you see the AI Act as a burden and a challenge, it will become a burden and a challenge. But if you think about kind of like the AI Act, and it's there, so you can't kind of like you can't wish it away. It is there, and it's already in action, and it will take into action. If you see it as an opportunity.
I don't know about you, but I cannot hear you, Tristan.
Oh, you can't hear me anymore. So
now you're back. Now you're back.
okay. So sorry, what I said is like, don't see it kind of like it's a mindset change. If you see it as a challenge, the AI Act will be a challenge. But if you see it as an opportunity to show that you're doing trustworthy in AI and complying with AI, this can really be a big potential. So I'm not sure. Maybe my internet has stopped.
I don't know. I didn't see myself as well, but I heard you. And one point I want to raise there is also to make companies feel better about this overwhelming, legal requirements that come there. It's not like you sit there as a company and all the requirements just come over you. The AI Act is really risk approached, right? So it's crucial to understand the more risk the AI use or implementation or the systems you're developing inhibit, the more requirements need to be met. If the risk from your AI system is very low, then the requirements are very low. And I think that might be something to help.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think also one of the provisions is that 70% of kind of like the AI solutions should kind of like fall in a class where there's very little to nothing that you need to do. Going over to the next.
They are doable. That is another point. They are doable. It's not like the requirements, as far as we can see now, it's not like it's impossible to meet the requirements.
Yeah. So going on to the next question. So here of a LinkedIn user, it seems that especially educators, institutions that educate a massive number of people aren't aware of AI literacy and AI compliance. They think they can educate their customers themselves without educating intern staff. Would you agree on that?
I'm not sure I get that question.
Maybe let me rephrase or think kind of like maybe put it in a way where I think kind of like especially a lot of educators and institutions. Maybe it goes a little bit also in the direction of the thing. I mean, I'm teaching at the Technical University of Munich, and I mean this what we're seeing here. And I mean, my course was one of the first courses on the management of AI. And what we teach, most of the courses that we have, we teach those people how to build artificial intelligence, how to build kind of like the technology basis. And what I see, there's very little in those students that go through kind of like these technology phases to become a data scientist or an AI engineer. There is very little kind of like ethics and kind of like compliance in there. And I mean, everyone knows the AI Act is coming and something, but they have very little awareness about what this actually means. And maybe the idea or the question is, well, is there something that when we already train those people very early on, we should think about how we can do this in alignment with kind of like the AI Act a little bit?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And I also think, I mean, that's our approach. And as far as I understand, that's your approach at the Institute as well, um, to make sure that it covers different aspects,
Yeah.
right? That it's not just focused, like we said, on the technical side, on the legal side, on the ethics side, but make sure that that techies, I mean, they already do have an understanding of the technical side, and it's for sure better than my understanding, right? So I think we always have to make sure that we fill the gaps that are there, instead of making educated staff more educated just on the field that they're working on.
Yeah. So then here I have I think a last question until maybe there are some other questions that are coming in, but one last question. We're also coming towards the end of our session. Is until when does a company have to ensure AI literacy for all employees? And maybe we can make it also a little bit broader. Is what happens if you don't have AI literacy? So first of all, until when do companies need to ensure this for all employees, and what happens if you don't ensure it? Like if is someone coming, how big is the likelihood that they're coming, and will you be fined millions or billions?
Yeah. So you have to comply or have to make sure AI literacy until February 2025, which is very, very soon. Which does not mean if you haven't started that yet that you cannot meet the requirements, because then you have to start now and make sure to like work on that. The risk of non-compliance are that, you know, at least in, I don't want to say in theory because it's very practical, but it does not mean, or other way around, sorry. You may face penalties for failing to meet AI literacy requirements, but it does not mean that if you're not 100% meeting the requirements February 2025, that you will be facing penalties right away, right? It just means that you really have to start, and starting February 2025, that is a risk that exists, because non-compliance could lead to, you know, to fines, and not only that, also to improper use of AI systems, resulting in non-compliance with legal requirements, and so on and so on. So there is, I think it's Article 99. I'm not sure, but I think it's Article 99 of the AI Act that shows how high the penalties for non-compliance can go. It does not. Article 4 is not explicitly listed there, but it is very, very likely that the fines of up to 1% of total worldwide annual turnover, up to 7.5 million euros, whichever is higher, might apply. And that does not mean that if a company does not meet the requirements, it does have to pay 7 million euros. But it means that if you actually are questioned by authorities and they find that you are not prepared, that you are not working on that issue, that you will be facing a penalty. And also, I mean, I don't have to tell you, right? Misuse of AI and not making sure you have the know-how that you need can damage an organization's reputation, erode trust with customers and stakeholders, and that can really harm your business.
Yeah, great. I mean, we're coming to an end. I really enjoyed our discussion, and especially your insights. I think they have been very, very valuable, and I want to I want to actually give you now the opportunity to with your kind of like last verdict.
My last words. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Before I share my last words, if there are any questions open, or if you say, okay, Marlene, you said something that I just did not understand, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn and ask those questions. I'm happy to help. And if you ask me, like, what is the one piece of advice I would give, is just start. You know, those who do not start cannot succeed, and don't feel overwhelmed. The best way to not feel overwhelmed is just to start. And I think once you started, you will lose lose all German Angst and will just feel that it actually has a good impact on your company.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I only want to add, like, don't see it as a threat. See it also as an opportunity. And I mean, we're all together in the same boat. It's what we said at the beginning, like learning by doing. We're all navigating together. So these are exciting times. Very, very cool. And thank you so much for being here. We will have more of these events where we kind of like try to tackle very kind of like niche questions that we have, and hopefully, Marlene, I can invite you back at some point, because I really enjoyed your insights and your know-how.
Thank you.
Thank you.